Welcome to the Depot. We're going to be projecting tonight, so I appreciate your cooperation and listening well while we do this. And thanks all of the Band of Wives for being here.
Thank you all for coming out. I'm Christine Bronstein, and founder of A Band of Wives. I think most of you are wives, but for any of you that don't know what it is, we are an online social network for all women. It's just about supporting women. I really believe that if women supported the women in their own backyards, the world would change significantly. That it's not a time right now for us to be fighting by ourselves, but to be supporting each other. And as A Band of Wives started to grow, thanks to Layla and so many others, Rebecca Lubin, and we really realized that women's voices and stories were so important and really wanted to focus on the positive aspects. And Carol Pott, who helped birth this baby and edited so well all the stories, and I worked for 2 years to help get this together. We really wanted to create a book, all of us, that really shined a light on the positive parts of female connection. And I think was so lucky about all the stories that came in, as they all touched on such amazing and different topics, from body image to sex, to motherhood, but all through the lens of positive female connection. And we're trying to create a vehicle for women to be able to share their stories. So we have a second book coming out. The essays you can submit if you go to bandofwives.com. You can see on the right-hand side about submissions for our second book, which is about transitions. So we're going to be making sure women's voices are getting out into the world. And we also have my story. So if you want to see your name in print, we have a version of Nothing But the Truth, where you can enter your story in at the end, and we put it up on Amazon, and you can order it, your friends can order it, and your story is the last story in the book, and your name is in the table of contents. So fun gift, fun thing, and with so many wonderful women, so a great way to share your stories about positive female connection, because I do think that we all have those women in our lives that have touched us. And my story is about my best friend, Mitra Hani. I really wanted to shine a light on a relationship, a female relationship that was jealousy-free. We have just amazing, we're so lucky, love for many, many years, decades now. That was just easy and loving and so special and important. So I'm going to read a little bit from my essay called Sister Soulmates. We met in San Francisco on a Thursday night in 1995. I was having a cocktail party at an apartment I was living in with my boyfriend of the moment, which I call Bottoms, B-O-T-M. When this woman with huge curly hair and bright orange flowered pants came flying into the middle of the gathering. My friend Derek had brought Mitra, and as a joke had pushed her into the party, staying behind in the hallway. Although it was an unusual scene, a laughing, big-maned, beautiful woman flinging herself into a rather tightly knit group, no one flinched. We just drank our vodkas, tilted our heads, and gave her a practiced, we're too cool to look surprised, hey. Derek finally came in, but we'd already swept Mitra into our group. From that time forward, we were like sisters, except that we'd chosen each other. It was love at first sight until I met my current husband. It was the deepest, safest love I would know. And I go on to talk about a lot of our misadventures. So I hope that you pick up a copy and read it. If you buy 2 copies, you get a free tote bag today up at the front. And I want to introduce a couple of more contributors to come up and to read. Rebecca Lubin is my amazing nanny and co-mother of my children.
Hello. I wrote an essay called I Don't Need Ovaries to Be Fertile, and it's about when I was a very young child, 8 years old, I lost the ability to have biological children. And for most 8-year-olds, this probably wouldn't have been a really big deal, but since I was 3, I had the names picked out of what I was going to name these 10 or 12 children I was going to have, and their ages and what schools they would go to. So it was actually a big deal. I wasn't sure I had this vision of my life was going to be like a Joni Mitchell song with making soup and watching children run around. And it kind of is like that. It ended up like that anyway. But I wrote about what it was like to grow up not knowing if you were going to get to do the things that you so wanted when you were a small child. So this is the beginning of my essay. On July 25th, 1978, Louise Brown, the world's first test tube baby, was born in England. I was 11 years old and had been infertile for 3 years, since the removal of my second ovary at the age of 8. My doctor had been totally bewildered upon discovering that a second cyst had encapsulated a second ovary in only 18 months. I had thought then that the chance of ever experiencing pregnancy had been taken harshly from me. "I've never heard of anything like this happening to a child," he told my parents, and that admission left me feeling as if I were the only person to have experienced the isolation, loss, and betrayal one's own body can bring them. But with the birth of Louise Brown, I realized that there was someone else who knew exactly how I felt. Leslie Brown, her mother. She too had suffered from infertility, thwarted by blocked fallopian tubes and failure. She made history to agreeing to in vitro fertilization, at that time an unconfirmed and purely experimental procedure that had never resulted in a baby. She was my very own personal Neil Armstrong. 4 years later, she had a second daughter, Natalie, who was the IVF baby, number 40 for the planet. Leslie Brown taught me something when I was only 11 years old and trying to come to terms with what it would mean for me never to have a biological child, that no matter what the situation, there are always choices that remain. At 8 years old, I had bravely announced, "So what? I'll just adopt," when my parents explained to me that my second ovary had not been saved. But truthfully, even then, I longed for the babies that would someday be mine. They would have my blue eyes, my nose, my freckles, have really good singing voices, and there would be 10 of them. Her voice had a different tone on July 25th, 1978, that monumental day, one that was hoarse with emotion and longing for me to have everything I wished for when I became a grown woman. She held me close and told me that I would be able to get pregnant and have a child someday if that's what I desired. She told me that if in England they could retrieve an egg through a blocked fallopian tube and whip up a zygote in a petri dish, science would evolve, and I would be able to have the same thing done with a donor egg. On February 3rd, 1984, 8 years to the month I lost my second ovary, the first IVF donor egg baby was born, and choices grew. So I chose to become a nanny instead of have my own children. I always thought that someday, magically, I would meet the person I want to marry and we'd just adopt a whole bunch of children, sort of like Mia Farrow, and have like a Benetton ad of a house full of children. But that didn't happen. But I really, truly feel like there's nothing I've missed out on, and that's thanks a lot to these two people sitting here. So this is about my children. My children are many. This May, Sienna sent me a text that said, "You raised me too. Happy Mother's Day." I've been telling Rose, Lily, Sage, and Sam an ongoing epic story for the past 7 years. Skylar is the suddenly beautiful college co-ed who comes home for the weekend and wants to meet me for brunch. Rowan told me, "You understand me so much, it's like you have a PhD in children." He and his little siblings, Caleb and Charlotte, are the cute little people who get buckled into the back seat of my Honda every afternoon, asking me to play Tom Petty on my iPod, requesting chewing gum and orange Tic Tacs, and calling me Betta. For 6.5 years, I've worked with this family as their nanny, house manager, and personal assistant, the CEO, as they like to say. My relationship with their mother trumps anything I have had with all the other women who have entrusted their children to me. She calls me her co-parent, their children's mommy number 2, and her real wife. She even anointed me as Caleb and Charlotte's godmother. She has made me feel as if I truly have children of my own, because they let me love their children as a parent would, and that gift is invaluable. I've always had an especially close relationship with Caleb, their 5-year-old son. When he was only 3, I was getting him ready for his nap, and he asked me very seriously, "Are you a mommy?" "I'm a Betta," I said. Then I will make you a mommy, he told me very earnestly, and he had me sit on the floor while he waved his magic wand over my head. He then gathered up all his favorite toys, his trains, his monkeys, and his much-loved books, and dumped them on my lap. Now, I asked. Not yet, he said, and raised the wand high and smacked me right in the head with it. Now, he yelled, now you are a mommy. It made sense. I was covered in crap, suddenly had a searing headache, and felt a little dizzy and sleep-deprived, very much like a parent. But I also could not help thinking of the Velveteen Rabbit and how it became real just because one little boy believed in it so much. And if I ever grow insecure in that faith, I will just remember how this beautiful little boy will lay himself in my lap and look at me with pure love and whisper, I am your children. Thank you.
And I hope you have your tissues ready to introduce Mickey Nelson, who also helped us with the editing and so much with the book, and her mom, Vicki, who's also in the book.
I won't make you cry. I'm Mickey Nelson. I'm from Marin. A little bit about myself. Went to Branson and UCLA. My whole family is here supporting me. In 2010, I was living in New York City. I had gone there to pursue publishing and journalism of sorts in that genre, and I ended up doing fashion PR and fashion editorial, and not doing publishing, which I had gone there to do. I had gone there at the urging of my sister and my brother and my family and a lot of my loved ones who've known that writing's been my life, and that's what I went there to do. In late 2010, my sister passed away in a car accident here in Marin County, and I came home suddenly. That precipitated my move home in September of 2010. And through a series of kind of circuitous circumstances, I ended up meeting Phil, who in my genre of writing or journalism is God, right, Phil? Which was something that happened very easily, and I knew I was getting some help from my eyes in the sky. But then I met Christine through Phil, which has been almost even better. And she was collecting the essays for this book, and I started helping her edit them and helping Carol, who had a big workload, and one essay turned to 10, and 10 turned to 20, and ironically, it was exactly what I had gone to New York to do, and I had to come back to do it, and life is very funny that way. And I just want to take this opportunity to really thank Chris, because obviously unimaginably hard circumstances the last couple of years for me and my family, but you know, it brought me back to life. This job brought me back to life. So, and of course I know I have some of my stand-in sisters out there somewhere, so I write about them in my essay, which I will excerpt now if you guys don't mind. Just a month shy of the 2-year anniversary of my sister's passing, I look back on this piece I wrote and read at her memorial, and I'm carried away. I'd like to be able to say that even the brief time that has passed has healed my wounds, but I'd be lying. Anyone who's ever told you that time heals all wounds was trying to sell you on the aphoristic equivalent of a placebo. Time does not heal all wounds. But in time, we do grow as people, and with that growth, we can hopefully see our wounds with a different perspective. The truth is, some days I wake up with the theme song from Rocky in my head, and the other days I resign myself to ice cream for breakfast. Even now, when the finality of what's happened strikes me, it's like a swift blow to the chest and nearly impossible to endure. More impossible still to endure with an open heart. The key for me has been compassion with myself, realizing that having ups and downs is no sweat. It's normal. It's weathering those ups and downs with grace that makes a real quality life, makes a real quality woman. Part of my connection to Lauren now lies in my having absorbed some of her qualities into my character, which I feel are equipping me with the tools I need to live life without her in clear sight. I was born very free-spirited and starry-eyed, she gentle, subtle, and knowing in a kind of unassuming way. Her spirit is and was realistic, yet still hopeful. She knew the best could happen, but she'd never fall apart if it didn't, like I have a tendency to do. I've always been younger and less appropriate than her, but she let me feel like her equal, always. In looking at these admirable qualities of hers through the lens of her legacy, I can see clearly that having them in my life will ultimately make it calmer, happier, and more balanced. In Life as in Passing, Lauren showed me that although my penchant for wishful thinking is a sweet thing, you just can't build a sturdy life on it. There's no way to get used to the loss of someone so close to you. At just 22 months apart and consonant in voice and mannerisms, we were more like twins than anything else. Lauren was a part of every memory, conversation, and inside joke for the first 26 years of my life. Adjusting completely to that horrifying and about face of losing her is simply an impossibility. But I'm beginning to understand there's a way to use it for good, both in her honor and for mine. A tragedy like this levels a person. It flattens their mind, character, and soul right down into the ground. What I try determinedly to do is to see that unmitigated demolishment as an opportunity to build myself back up better than I was before. How often will I get the chance to look at my base self with so much honesty? How often will I get the chance to cultivate my character all over again from the ground up? I can be careful not to reintroduce flaws and misgivings that may have afflicted me before, and mindful of new qualities that will be necessary to have as I face the world under more difficult circumstances. Sometimes I miss my old life, as I call it, when I had less weighing on my mind and far fewer worries. The thoughts that come in the wake of something this traumatic incite ideas and insights that are so much larger than me, so it's had to be my effort not to let them cast a shadow upon me. I've realized, though, that sometimes life makes your decisions for you. If this hadn't happened, I wouldn't have moved back to San Francisco from New York, a decision that's ultimately been healthy for me. I wouldn't have spent so much time with my parents and my brothers as a grown woman, creating an unbreakable family unit stronger and closer than any I've ever heard of or read about. If this hadn't happened, Lauren wouldn't have literally reached down from heaven to guide me to a job I find fulfilling and fun on a daily basis. I can feel the metaphoric tectonic plates beneath my life sort of subtly shifting into the place I'll need them to be for the rest of my life, and that feels very good. There's a real pride that comes with making strides through something so difficult. My heart just feels differently since Lauren moved from earth to heaven. I suppose that's the best way to describe it. 2 years ago, I was sure that was because my heart was broken. Today, I think, maybe it only feels differently because Lauren and I are sharing my heart now, and I'm just not quite used to the feeling yet. I hope the latter is true. I'd share anything with her. It's because Lauren set such a potent example that I have some semblance of an idea of what the next step is. It's with the profound support of my stand-in sisters, You Know Who You Are, who miraculously always seem to be one step ahead of my needs, that I still have confidence when I don't know what the next step is.
Lauren definitely has been pulling strings for this book since Mickey came on. Carol and I had been working hard and diligently, and somehow when Mickey came on and Lauren decided it was going to happen, it got a lot faster. So I thank you, and thank you for sharing your story.
Ages in the outfit.
And our next reader is another just dear friend of mine who I love, another sister soulmate, and I feel so blessed to have met and share this book with her. Please welcome Deborah Santana.
Hi. Well, I want to say something about the women who are in this book. I published a memoir in 2005, and I think I was pretty brutally honest about myself and my life. And I've been struggling with finishing my second memoir because I don't really want to be so brutally honest anymore. I want to paint everything differently and not unlike something that you said. And so the stories are so powerful, and I really admire everyone who spoke from their heart and wrote so beautifully. I chose to write about animals. It was so safe. But yeah, there's a lot of power and bravery and real heart in the writing in this book, so I'm very grateful to be a part of it. I wrote about a trip I took last year to Kenya and some animals that I encountered. So I will just read a little bit. "3 months ago, I was in Lewa Downs, Kenya, on a safari. It was my second day there, and the expanse of the land was breathtaking. Not only did a cheetah cross our path right after our small plane landed on the dirt runway, but when I arrived at my tented cabin, small birds were flying in and out of the open windows and fluttering their wings over my bed. On our second afternoon, the camp was abuzz because there had been a lion killed the night before. We set out across the savannah in a windowless jeep, our driver Saban scanning the wiregrass to find the lions. Spotting a pride of lions is the crowning achievement of the best safari drivers. I was content sitting back in the seat, my body relaxing in the warm afternoon breeze as peacock blue superb starlings flitted past. Elephants stood on a hill above us, and a herd of zebras glanced up from a watering hole. I couldn't believe how lucky I was to be in Kenya, on the continent where humankind originated. We drove close to the evidence of a kill, a giraffe carcass being watched over by other giraffes whose long necks seemed to hang in mourning. I was struck by how the giraffe stayed close to the remains, not leaving the fallen member of the tower, and keeping the hundreds of vultures surrounding them at bay. We continued our drive, Saban masterfully maneuvering the jeep over rocky streams and rutted roads. I looked over the open right side of our jeep and recognized a hide of some type lying about 4 feet away. It was the same color as the grasses, and I pointed, saying ever so slowly, "What is that?" Saban had been looking over the left side of our vehicle. He quickly stepped on the brakes, and the 3 other passengers and I lurched forward as the jeep stopped. One passenger leapt from the seat next to me, clutching her shirt and panting. I stood up and stared into the eyes of a very sleepy lion, full from the kill. I calmly raised my camera and took a photo. One by one, 5 lions stood and stretched, looked us over, then lay back down to continue their digestion. For 5 minutes, no one spoke. The only sound was the click of camera shutters. On the drive back to camp, everyone laughed at me for asking, "What is that?" But I had not been able to tell the difference between the grasses and the fur, between the soft breathing of the lion and my own peaceful reverie. Although the other passengers had been frightened, I hadn't felt afraid. 20 years ago, when I first hugged a tree and acknowledged my relationship with every aspect of life, I had been given a connection to all souls, not just people, but animals, plants, water, seeds, and sky. Out of respect for the natural world, I would never hug a lion, knowing its predatory nature. But in a fleeting moment, the lion and I had communicated a harmless message to each other. It would have all been different had the pride not enjoyed a kill the night before. But they had, and I had been fortunate to feel the power of a 300-pound carnivorous mammal. Thank you.
Well, we could do a Q&A, or we can just mingle and ask questions and thank the authors. Yeah. I'm not going to sing tonight. I haven't had tequila shots. That's mandatory. I'm so grateful for all of you for coming out and for all of the contributors. And there's going to be lots of other speaking, so we're going to hear all of their stories too. And I hope you check out the book. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact. And can I have the contributors raise their hands again one more time so people can see? So definitely reach out to the other women here and mingle and have a good time. And thank you so much for coming. And please flex your voice in one way or another, my story or for our second transitions book. And if you have any questions, come up to any of us. Thank you.